Hey, wanting to address in this video the ending of the Cold War, because it does seem kind of strange looking back on it now that we get to around 1990 and the Cold War just stops and the Soviet Union collapses for some sort of obscure reason, and we don't really dig into that all that much. Um, and it's really a problem of economics for the Soviets, but that's exacerbated by the United States in a neat way. During the Reagan administration, Ronald Reagan was sort of probably considered by by historians as one of the ultimate sort of cold warriors. He's really tied in that position with John F. Kennedy. Kennedy was very much a thorn to the Soviets during his lifetime. But something that happened during the Reagan administration was pretty neat. Reagan really pushed for this program called SDI, Strategic Defense Initiative. The press called this Star Wars. The original Star Wars movie came out in 1977. This was in the very early 80s, and so a lot of people were very much enamored by Star Wars, and this is kind of in that. The program, the intention of the program was really ambitious. The idea was that the United States was going to put satellites in geosynchronous orbit, so satellites that would orbit the globe continuously, and those satellites were going to have extremely powerful lasers mounted on them. And if the Soviets were to launch a nuclear strike, launching missiles at the United States, those missiles would be detected and shot down by those lasers. Um, and this was in early 1980, 81, 82 was when the public at least becomes pretty aware of this program. Uh, what's interesting is this is 2020 and we still do not have the capability of doing something like this 40 years later. Uh, so, but this was SDI. It still is one of the most expensive defense projects in history. The Reagan administration wanted in 1980 dollars, $26 billion for initial research. Not actually putting this thing into the field, not actually launching satellites. They want $26 billion just to see if this is possible and what kind of things we would need to do to get it off the ground. So this was incredibly expensive. And like I said, 2020, we still don't have the technology to actually do something like this. This is still beyond us at the moment. But here's what's incredible. Uh, the United States government knows we don't have the ability to do this. It is possible. It is in the realm of possibility. I honestly, even though it's 2020, foresee us having the ability to do this at some point. Whether it'll happen in my lifetime or not, I'm not really sure, but it's a possibility. But even though this is really an ambitious project, the Soviets were absolutely, and here's the big kicker, the Soviets were absolutely terrified that this would work. They thought that the United States could pull this off and this would absolutely work. And that's fine because it is a defensive measure. But here's the thing. If the United States was able to accomplish this, the United States would go back basically to having a monopoly on nuclear weapons. From 44 to 49 until the Soviets developed their first nuclear weapon, the United States has a monopoly on nuclear weapons. Well, if we get this thing off the ground, if this works in 1981, 1982, or even as late as 85 or 6, the United States would go back to having a monopoly on nuclear weapons. meaning that we would not be threatened at all by the Soviet Union so much anymore. We could even launch nuclear weapons at the Soviets and they wouldn't be able to do anything about it. That absolutely terrified the Soviets. Um, and, one of the big things, one of their big negotiating things was continually, every time they met with Gorbachev, met with Ronald Reagan, was continually pushing, hey, you can develop SDI, and we can be okay with that, but we really want to push for leaving this in the laboratory. They really, really didn't want to put this into practice. They were absolutely terrified of it, and so that was one of the big things that really gets us pretty close to winning the Cold War, was just because the Soviets were terrified of that possibility. Like I said, technology didn't work at the time, still wouldn't be able to work today. We do get some pretty cool movies out of it. There's a great movie that sort of dabbles in this. It's called Real Genius, with Val Kilmer. It's a really cool 80s movie you should go check out. Um, Got some awesome music in there. But on top of that, though, the Secretary of Defense, we've changed it from Secretary of War. Secretary of Defense sounds a little bit less aggressive. Secretary of Defense for Ronald Reagan was a guy named Caspar Weinberger. Awesome, awesome name. And he promoted this idea to Ronald Reagan that we should have a new strategy put in place for winning the Cold War. He predicted that the Soviet Union's economy was really, really weak, was, not super hanging on by a thread, but if it was challenged, their economy could collapse. And the way to get the Soviet Union to start spending crazy, crazy amounts of money is if the United States started an arms race. If we start building weapons like crazy, the Soviet Union is going to be freaked out about that. So they're going to have to build weapons like crazy. Weapons systems are insanely expensive. Development, implementation, building all these things are incredibly expensive. So the United States in the 1980s starts this huge arms race. We're building all kinds of stuff. We're building up the military to fantastic proportions. The Soviets have to follow suit. They have to do that, because if they don't, there's a possibility that the United States will invade the Soviet Union. So they have to respond in kind. When they do that, though, their economy isn't able to take it. And so they're spending a tremendous, tremendous amounts of money, and their economy literally does collapse. And one of the big things is the Soviet Union sponsored. They provided money to a lot of their satellite republics. So when the Soviet Union was at the height of their power, they were sending quite a bit of money to places like North Korea. A lot of places in Eastern Europe were receiving government assistance from the Soviet Union. Cuba was receiving a lot of assistance from the Soviet Union. So the Soviet Union is supporting a lot of different places. And don't get me wrong, the United States was doing the same thing. It's just our economy was stronger and able to, continue to support all of those various countries and stuff like that, and help them out with foreign aid and stuff, so that they would side with the United States in a potential war, and as well as all kinds of foreign policy, diplomacy, stuff like that. But the Soviets, though, they couldn't handle all of that, as well as this arms race, and so their economy collapses. They have some tremendous internal governmental restructuring, and the Soviet Union collapses. They lose a lot of the Soviet bloc countries that they had been supporting, and the Soviet Union collapses and ceases to exist by 1989, 1990. And then they sort of contract to just being Russia again. But that's ultimately what wins the Cold War is just the United States engaging in this tremendous, tremendous arms race that costs a tremendous amount of money, but it ultimately leads to the fall of Soviet Union. And that's a cool way to pull that off, because in that strategy, there were some lives lost in these proxy wars and stuff, but just having this sort of financial attack is a cool way to resolve that without a lot of lives being lost. So that's the end of the Soviet Union. I just wanted to kind of finish us off on that. So I'll talk to you later.